Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us wherever you are. Today, we're talking about FME 2020.0 and how you can use it for authoring and all the new features that are in there. And we thought we'd start off by introducing ourselves. Looks like we're in a sorted alphabetical order. So Andrea, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I'm Andrea Eisma. I lead our desktop technology experts at SAFE. I'm super excited to show you guys some of the new features for 2020.
And I'm Chris. I'm also on the desktop experts team, and I'll be joining to show you a little bit about Google BigQuery readers and writers, and yeah, just some new features in Workbench.
And I'm Dale Lutz. I'm one of the two co-founders of Safe Software. Pretty thrilled to be able to show what we've been up to for the last year and to take hopefully an hour break from the crazy of the outside world.
I'm Dmitry Bach. I work for SAFE for 15 years, and all this time I was exploring and pushing the boundaries and creating all kind of interesting scenarios with FME. And today I will be talking about computer vision and AR.
Okay, so that's Dmitry is sort of our closer today, so you'll definitely want to hang on till then. So with that, we'll just switch gears slightly to make mention that just yesterday we made available a bunch of pages related to the crisis that we're in as a world, and we know that there are some organizations that are using FME relating to response, and we just want to make people aware that if you have any work going on related to dealing with this crisis, that we're prioritizing support related to it, as well as giving free licenses to anyone that might be needing it. You know, Don and I often say that when we started SAFE, our goal was that people would spend more time actually using the data and less time fighting with getting it into shape. And we've heard many cases where people used to say they would spend 90% of the time prepping the data and 10% using it. And Don and I would say the world has never needed to spend its time actually using data as much as it does now. And we said that all the time, but really, I think it's never been more true than right now. And so if there's any way that we can free the data prep side time and squeeze that down and help people to get on with actually doing analysis and planning, we definitely want to be part of that. So ironically, as Stephanie said, our team came up with the idea of a data spa. That was going to be the FME World Tour theme this year, about coming and spending a day of kind of massaging your data and having some rest and relaxation. So we'll do that virtually today. So that's kind of our theme that we're going to try to weave in, and hopefully it ends up being at least a calming part of your day. So we're going to look at a few things today. We're looking at some of the stuff we've been up to on the Workbench side this year, as well as the new connectors and formats. We're going to zoom in specifically and talk a little bit. Andrew's going to show us a couple things on the Revit side. There's been an enormous amount of effort on Revit, and we'll show a little bit there. Boy, I don't remember if we actually have an automations writer slide or not, but I'm hoping that somebody has one. When we practiced this, I know that there wasn't one, so we'll see. That's going to be a surprise to me. And lastly, we'll look at the stuff Dimitri's been up to around computer vision, machine learning, AI, and some FME augmented reality stuff. So when we sat down and began to think about actually even the planning more than a year ago about FME 2020, our headline was FME for the enterprise. And so really, we're trying very, very hard to make FME into a solution that goes all the way from a lone desktop person all the way up to an entire massive enterprise making use of FME's capabilities to ensure that the data is moving where it needs to get to. And so, of course, we say and we believe that FME has unrivaled spatial support. We can read and write pretty much any spatial format or system that exists, and that's a big key piece of the value that we bring to the table. But that said, it is true that today the #2 format in FME, both reading and writing, is the almighty Excel spreadsheet. And so a lot of people out there using FME for things non-spatial. And we've been doing work not related to the virus, but next door with our friends at Fraser Health. just using FME to prep good old-fashioned tabular patient data for studies of effectiveness of various treatments. And so they've been very excited. One of the quotes I saw was that something that used to take 2 weeks, they can get it done now that it's set up in just a couple of minutes with FME. And so that's the kind of thing that we see people doing with the non-spatial side of FME. We're always working on performance, and that is a little bit like whack-a-mole, because at the same time as we're making FME faster, we're also making it better. And sometimes those two things are in tension, but nonetheless, you should find that FME 2020 is faster than FME 2019, and in some pockets, drastically faster. On the scalability side, there's a bunch of new initiatives on that front. More will be talked about in 2 days when the second part of this 2-part webinar airs, which is all around the automation side and some of the work that's gone on with the ability to scale FME engines and also use the automations framework in FME Server to really attack massive data problems. FME is an immensely flexible tool. There's so many ways you can piece the building blocks together. We argue that you're only limited by your imagination, really. And so that's something that's always been there, and it remains that way today. On the security side, we have an army of people that are always analyzing the latest security reports. We integrate a lot of third-party libraries in FME, and we analyze and make sure that we're always running the most recent ones as best we possibly can. And so we've really doubled down on that. And the company is actually undergoing an ISO certification exercise right now. I hope that isn't a secret. But so that's a big exercise for us as well. And lastly, we argue that we are a no-code enterprise integration solution. So you can sit down, draw your workflows, draw your orchestrations, and deploy them without ever cracking open some code. If you really are determined, of course, you can write some Python, and you can call that from FME. But really, our goal is that you should be able to get what you want done by just clicking and exploring the universe of solutions and then deploying that. So when we talk about what we actually sell at SAFE, we say it's really an entire platform that brings to the table connecting things, transforming things, and automating them. Connect, transform, automate. So today we're going to be focusing on the first 2 parts of that, and then in 2 days is the automation webinar. Now, how does this manifest? On the desktop on the left, that's where you build and run your data flows or your workflows. And you do that using our product, our piece called FME Workbench, which lets you glue together the blue and the green and the kind of tan things and piece together transformation of data that gives you really fine-grained control of exactly what's going on all the way through the translation experience. So that's FME Workbench, and you'll see some of that this morning. Then you deploy those configurations over to FME Server, where you can automate them in a variety of very powerful ways. And then lastly, if you want to run that up in the cloud, you can buy FME Server by the hour from us, hosted on AWS, and it is coming to some marketplaces as well on some other cloud hosting platforms, but I'll let the folks in 2 days tell you details about that. Yeah, so there's what I've been hinting at. Next Thursday is the second webinar on automating, and I bet if I ask Stephanie nicely, she can chat out the link so you can register for that. As Dawn has said, if you haven't used FME Server 2020, you haven't used FME Server. It is a radical step up in terms of the power, and so that's a very big deal, and you'll definitely want to take that in. I know that Dawn and Jen, and I'm not sure who all else is on that same call, but nonetheless, it will definitely be worth tuning into. Yeah, and so here's our theme for the world tour, kind of manifesting in these slides. And we would argue that you shouldn't need to feel stressed when it comes to data integration. In fact, we try very hard for your time spent with FME to be fun. And we hear that from our customers very often. And if there's corners of FME that aren't fun, I had a customer tell me that recently that there was one thing that they bumped into, and she said it was the first time that FME it felt tedious and not fun. We want to know those things so we can address them. And in that particular case, there's actually a lot of effort going on right now to address even that one. So that's the only one I'm aware of where FME is tedious and not fun, and we're trying to fix that. But the idea is that when you get in there, you can quickly explore options, you can see what your data is giving you, you can examine alternatives very, very quickly, and have the fun, frankly, of solving a puzzle and the dopamine hit you get from that reward. So that's really what we're trying for and what brings us to work each day, and we hope you all are able to make use of. And as I hinted at, especially during this time when there's enough other things around to kind of make us a bit on edge, perhaps. Oh, where's my friend Chris? There we go. On the Workbench side of things, the biggest improvement, and there's so many small improvements, but the highlight reel Workbench one for this time around was around styling connection lines. And I think Chris or Andrea is going to show this a little bit more live, but here you can see it in action. This is probably a bit of gratuitous use of styling on here,
yeah.
but
yeah, for this one, I just wanted to highlight just how you could really change and visualize those lines. So as Dale was saying, you know, if you really want to make things fun back in Workbench, you don't have to just have the thin black line anymore. You can start tracing your workflows. You can see upstream where your flow is, as well as downstream as well, and change those connection lines.
Yes, I mean, we used to follow the same as Henry Ford saying, you can make your connection lines any color you want as long as it's black. But we've now opened that up. And as Andrea hinted at, when you set that up, you can indicate to trace the data flow all the way to the end or all the way to the beginning. So it's actually not just a stylistic thing, it's actually also a tracing thing. And that's part of an initiative that we have underway to help you understand where data is coming from and going to in your Workbench rule sets, workspaces, and that this is sort of the first dip into that. So anyway, Andrea, are you going to show it a bit later, or does Chris?
I believe Chris is going to highlight some.
Okay, Chris is right now busily getting ready for that.
Yeah, I think our demo is going to show just a couple slides, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so on the new formats side of things, he says, here we go. Well, there's a few different kind of things to think about. Really, in the world we're in now, formats are no longer just files and bits and bytes on the on your hard drives and your SSDs. They now are really sources of data, which are actually systems out there, and we call those connectors in our new language. And so, on the connectors side of things, if it's helpful to think of us connecting to applications, the one we kind of highlight is our partnership with CityWorks, and a lot of municipalities starting to work FME into workflows that automate various things going in and out of CityWorks. A big effort for us has been working with our friends at Esri on the utility network and making sure we fully support that. And that is definitely something that people are now using, and we've also spun up a team here that's able to support that. On the Google side of things, there's a bunch of work gone on there, and we'll talk about that more and maybe even show some. That's some foreshadowing. IBM, we work with the asset and planning facilities management things like Maximo and Tririga. So definitely some big convenient custom transformers there. And then on the Microsoft side, we've always worked well with Dynamics and Power BI, and many customers doing stuff with that. So those are just a sampling of some of the connectors that we've done. So on the enterprise cloud data side, on digging into the Google, for example, Google side of things, of course, BigQuery and the BigQuery GIS. And if I talk nice to Chris, I bet he'll show some of that. Is that right, Chris?
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to see that in just a second.
Very, very soon. And so then we also supported, just as we always have for Amazon S3, Google Cloud Storage. We also supported that same kind of thing on Azure. On the Apache side, we can read those data streams. On the Amazon side, Athena is there along with some of their other databases like Aurora and Redshift. Snowflake is a massive data warehouse company, and we do have a very powerful reader and writer for that. And lastly, on MongoDB, we did upgrade to version 3.
All right. So yeah,
So take it away.
swap out of there, and we'll open up Workbench. All right, so starting off with the Workbench demo, we're going to take a look at the new Google BigQuery connector that we do have. I'll just open up the parameters there. So those of you who are familiar with Google BigQuery, you would really treat this as any other connector, where you just set up a web connection, authenticate with your BigQuery credentials or your Google credentials, point to the project ID, and then it's very similar to an SQL creator or an SQL executor, where you're really just running SQL statements to run and get your data. In this case, we're going to be pulling down data from a table called urban areas, which is in the GeoUS boundaries open data project. And we're only going to be looking for areas that end with the name C, or that contain the name CA. So that's going to be the California urban areas that we're going to be grabbing. Here, it is going to be very similar to the SQL creator, where you do also get to expose the attributes. You could do this in an attribute exposer as well. But in this case, I'm doing it right into the BigQuery connector. Now, in the interest of time, I've already cached all of these features from BigQuery and up until reading in this GeoJSON. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, just because it does take a little bit of time to go out and query that data and fetch it to bring it back into Workbench. Running up to this first bit would take about a minute, and just to make things go a little bit faster, we've already cached those. So we'll just open it up in BigQuery to see what it actually looks like. So this is going to be the table that we're going to be reading from. Here we'll get all these same attributes that we already know the schema for. We can preview it here as well. And you can see that all of these have different data types. All of these will be preserved when we bring them into Workbench. And when you're writing to BigQuery as well, you can specify which data types the attributes can be as well. So back to the preview side, there's one special thing about this data set. Those of you who work with databases like Microsoft SQL Server, or I believe Oracle as well, will know that some databases support multiple geometries, and Google BigQuery does allow that. The geometry is really just saved as an attribute in well-known text. I think it can also be saved as GeoJSON. So when we bring it into Workbench, we can actually just build the geometry from there. So we'll just hop back into there. So that's exactly what we're doing here. The first step we're going to do is go and get all of our features from Google BigQuery. And the second step here is going to be build the geometry and assign the coordinate system. Here we know it's lat long 84, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing. And this is actually one of the main use cases that users from BigQuery are actually doing, is they're just pulling out the data from the BigQuery tables and then writing it out to a format like GeoPackage or Shapefile or GeoJSON. Of course, you can take advantage of any of the other close to 500 formats that we support writing to. In this case, we're just going to GeoPackage. And then we're also at the same time continuing on using those areas. I'll just show them up here. So you can see this is the exact same table after we've built the geometry. We get all these urban areas. So once we're at this point, we want to see, okay, that's great that we have the urban areas, but now what useful information can we pull from there? So why don't we take a look at some open data from the California Open Data Portal and read in the power outages for urban areas. Again, in the interest of time, we're only going to be reading in for these areas. So we're actually going to be using all of these polygons. We'll just have to refresh the background map there. While that's kind of loading up, what we're going to be doing there is really just reading in the power outages from those urban areas by using it as a spatial filter. So by doing that, we're actually limiting to only 107 features coming in from the California Open Data Set. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. Opening it up here. So this is what it looks like. It's just power outage incidents. All of these are on the California State GeoPortal, and you can download them as a spreadsheet KML, or if you prefer, which is what we're doing in this case, just read it as an API from the GeoJSON or GeoService. One thing that you'll notice in this data set, it is updated every 15 minutes. So in my mind, I haven't used Google BigQuery all that much, but we do know it's all about working with tons and tons of data. So one way that you could work with this is by starting to build up that giant data set by having this updating on a schedule every 15 minutes, say with FME Server. And we'll show a little bit about that in just a little bit. So back into Workbench, we can actually just give this a run now. Because we already have things cached up until the feature reader, when we hit run, all the transformers are going to start off from the latest feature cache. And we can see that the geo package was just written again. Uh-oh, already exists. So we'll give that another name. Our Outages 1. I believe that's the correct one. And we'll give that another run. All right, and then yeah, as that's going along, we're going to be testing for features. I'll inspect this one as it's going as well. And what we can see with these current power outages is some of them are active, some of them are not planned. And if I can find the attribute that I'm looking for right there, the estimated restore date. So a lot of these do have an estimated restore date. This would make you assume that crews could be on scene and they're already working on the problem. Others have no estimated restore date at all, so they're kind of ongoing. With this data set being updated every 15 minutes, we can get a really good idea of how much downtime there actually was for each outage. So what we can do with that is use the date time calculator to really calculate the number of minutes, or if you prefer to do hours, the outage has been in effect. So let's scroll over there. And we're calculating that in minutes. We'll call that estimated duration. From there, we can push it into the statistics calculator and then do some statistics on calculating the average outage for each urban area and determining the customer impact by really looking at how many customers were impacted. So we'll just open up the statistics calculator, which has had a little bit of a facelift. And Dale, I'm not sure if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the new improvements to the statistics calculator.
Yes, so thanks, Chris. Hey, before I do, I just wanted to point out that the advantage of the feature caching, Chris just highlighted it there, because when he ran into a problem, the fact that that whole first part had been run previously and was sitting there ready to go meant it was very easy to make a fix and carry on. And so thanks, Chris, for, I'm sure, that scripted highlight of the value of caching.
Definitely meant for that to happen.
Yes, but the with respect to the statistics calculator, it had a major overhaul in both its speed. So in some cases, Don and I might like to exaggerate slightly and say 1,000 times faster. I think I could make a case that's like that, but certainly many cases are 100 times faster. But it is possible to find a case where it's actually the same, but nonetheless, it's drastically faster almost for everybody. But the other thing is you have much more control now on what stats you're actually going to calculate. So the interface lets you choose, I want the average for the estimated duration and the sum for the impacted customers. In the old interface, you'd have to get the mean and the sum for everything. And so that's something that just avoids clouding your workspace, and Chris made a really great example of this. And so, yeah, it's a very powerful transformer. It's been totally reworked, drastically faster. We hope that folks out there enjoy it. We do know that it's a highly used transformer. And so if you have an old workspace with a stats calc, you can right click on it and say upgrade, and then you get this new interface and hopefully get to enjoy the speed. If you don't upgrade, you're going to be using the same as the old one.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dale. And yeah, so back to the last part of the demo, we've covered reading features in from Google BigQuery and writing it out to GeoPackage. So with that data set that's updated every 15 minutes, let's actually write that into a new Google BigQuery table. The one thing that you do need to know with Google BigQuery, if you're not using it already and plan on using it in the future, is that there are some pretty strict requirements for the date formats. So you will want to be using the date time calculator, or sorry, converter quite a bit to make sure that those dates are formatted, and then you can have the date time attribute formatted correctly. So just on the BigQuery writer side, looks very similar to any of your other database writer feature types, really, where you just select the table handling, point it to your data set. That would be similar to a schema, and you create a spatial column as well. On the user attribute side, we also have access to all the different data types that are available on Google BigQuery. So you can set those as needed when you're using the manual attribute definition. So now that we've actually written those out, let's open this up in Google BigQuery. Oh, sorry, actually, before hopping back into the browser, there are two writer feature types on this case. So the first one is going to Google BigQuery, And the second one, we're actually using the new Automations writer. And this is going to be used to pass all of these 107 features into a second workspace using the FME automation. So the benefit of using this is that really this is where this translation ends. We don't need to process it any further. But since there are new features for outage incidences, we can send this into a next workspace, similar to using like a workspace runner, and process them as they're already built into that table, and can just continue as they are right now. So we'll open that up here. And if I give this a refresh, we'll see that the new table has shown up. As that's coming along here. All right, there we go. So Power Outages 1 has shown up. You can see that all the data types are preserved as we set them in the writer feature type. And then on the on the preview side, we see everything has been written appropriately. Now, the next cool thing with Google BigQuery is that you can actually visualize this in GeoViz, and this is their online viewer for all their spatial data. So here we can actually see what all these outages look like. So we can zoom in on an area and see kind of which areas have the highest estimated duration. So this outage appears to be a lot longer than, say, this outage. And this is where you can take advantage of the Google processing power. So if you want to do additional processing in Google BigQuery, you can definitely take advantage of that. And now we'll just finish off with the second writer feature type, which is the FME Automations writer. And that's going to be this little guy right here. So this is where you can spin off all those 107 features into a second workspace, and it'll only be those features that are sent into that writer feature type. Aside from that, this is an automation. If you're not familiar with automations, they do start with an action. In this case, we're going to be doing a schedule, which is a 15-minute interval. The reason we've chosen a 15-minute interval is because the power outage data set updates every 15 minutes, and we want to catch every single outage and make sure that we know the exact duration of that event. This first workspace is that workspace that we just demoed right there, and then the second one would be if you wanted to take that to the next level and say process them to get a better idea of the estimated restore date as soon as that data becomes available. And then that workspace could then update the BigQuery table as needed, or you could process them further if you want. So that is a bit of a wrap on that side. We did mention that we would show the connection styles as well. If you had a sharp eye, you might have noticed that these were already pre-configured. And the way to change those is really to just right-click on the connection, go to Properties, and then you can change the connection style as needed. And you can even choose custom styles. And then from that, basically wrap.
I would just ask you to show the Apply Connection Style too.
Sure. So we'll just say green, and we'll do the Apply Connection Style too. So we can choose styles. And as you're going to see, if you just watch above the dialog, all the connection styles are going to change as soon as I click on that. So you can see all of those are there. Sorry, that was for all upstream, not all connections. And if I do all downstream, that should be the features right there.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't want to apply those changes, I can just cancel out. All right. Now
I think that at this point, Stephanie makes me the presenter.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay, let's see. There we go. Show my screen. Chris, are you seeing my screen?
I am.
Okay, good. So thanks so much, Chris. So that was a bit of a dive into just in general how you use FME Workbench to create workflows and run and explore, as well as some interesting ways we connected to live data. In fact, I think, Chris, in your case, you never ever were using anything that was on your own computer. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. Yes,
it was all coming from out there somewhere. So back to actual readers and writers, we added several in this last FME that are worth highlighting, and of course, many improvements across the whole bunch. Actually, it isn't even flagged here, but Microsoft Excel got a very big overhaul and is better in lots of ways. But City Jason, an effort out of the Netherlands, we're working with a university there, and so that's been a great partnership. Actually, I know that Michael Lavarda is dialed in, and one of our customers has been experimenting with it, and early days. Maybe there's a few places we can keep improving, and Michael will keep working on it. But nonetheless, for some workflows, it is already producing good results. ECW version 3, we got feedback from some customer that was shocked how much faster it was in our old ECW writing, and we're very thankful to our friends at Hexagon for working with us to find a way to get this into the hands of our broader joint customers, and so that's there. Entwine, I'm going to take a look at that in a moment, so we'll skip that for a second. GeoPackage, OGC standard, a SQLite database with a bunch of spatial goodies in it. We are really committed to supporting all of the things that arrive there, including the latest elevation support. Mapbox vector tiles, been asked for a long time. We have a reader and a writer. On the writer side, we might still be saying that that's tech preview, I don't recall, but for many workflows, it's totally fine. Some of them, there's some performance issues that we're going to look at if you're producing huge volumes of data. So we got a little bit of work still to do on the writing side, but please give it a spin. For many scenarios, it'll be great. And nobody will probably ever use direct draw as a raster on its own, but where you will care about it is if you're making Esri's 3D i3S, it's much faster of a format to display and produces just better i3S files. Worth pointing out that we continue to work very closely with Esri to make sure that our support of ArcGIS Pro is top notch at the same time as we continue to support the older Arc map side of the world. And so both of those work very well in the latest FME. And of course, we already talked about utility network. Lastly, let's see, last week, who knew that there was a 2-day virtual conference called SheetsCon, which was all about Google Sheets. And I heard a report saying that today there are 2 billion active users of Google Suite. So that would be Gmail and Docs and so on, 2 billion of them. So really, Google Sheets is a pretty important thing. And we know that it's safe, and so we work pretty hard there. Google has changed the APIs for reading and writing Google Sheets. So the current Google Sheets reader and writer in FME that's there today will quit working in October. We will have a replacement one that will be a package, which means if you have FME 2019 or later, you'll just be able to download it off of, you'll just type in Google Sheets and it'll offer you that. And so then you can upgrade your old workspaces to this. And so anyway, that's coming soon, so watch for new Google Sheets very soon. And now I realize I don't have to ask Chris to advance the slides, I can do it myself. Oh, I just wanted to duck in and show a couple things around Entwine reading. And so what Entwine is all about, it's a way to store massive point cloud data sets. What is this, 14 trillion points, I think, up in the cloud and access them very quickly and work with them. So USGS has this URL, and maybe Stephanie, you can tweet that out, USGS Entwine. Actually, it's also in my workspace, which I'll be giving to people afterwards. But nonetheless, that gets you to the index. You can click on any one of them, and then you can get into this online viewer, and you can see where the data set is and what it looks like in 3D. You can kind of spin it around. So that's being done with Poetry. And lastly, you ultimately can get its sort of root JSON file that tells you where it is. And this becomes the data set that FME will use. And so now if I flip over to my Workbench, so here you should be able to see my nice little comments about how I set this up. And I really want to tip my hat to Jovita and Alyssa at SAFE, who did all the hard work here, setting up this demo for me. But nonetheless, that's the link to get the index. Here's the URL, how you kind of put it together. And ultimately, that's my source data set name, which you can see right now. I learned about a place in Arizona called Fredonia because it had some interesting terrain. And I can then read it directly with FME without having to download the whole thing. And so how I did that, so here I'm using what's called a collapsed bookmark. You can make a bookmark in FME and collapse it. Why did I collapse it? Because when I read from this data set, if I'm in feature caching mode, which I've got it turned on, at this point, all billion points would be written out. And I didn't want all billion points because that's kind of slow. So instead, I've got a clipping rectangle that I set up in the creator. And so I'm reading this data set, which actually doesn't do any work. and it goes into the clipper, and only then do I actually do some work and I thin it out like this with that point cloud thinner. When I collapse the bookmark and run with caching, I only get the final result cached. And so that's a little speed tip that if you're not aware of that and turning off and on caching, you definitely want to be doing. And so then I'm able to produce a tin out of it. So if I look at my tin surface, there it is in the preview. And if I orbit around this thing, I can see that I've got a wee little bit of, I think, the end of the Grand Canyon, but I would let my American friends correct me. Does the end of the Grand Canyon go all the way up to Fredonia? My research said it did. And so this was a little bit of a piece of that. And so then I put it out to FME AR, and that's the end of my Workbench side of the demo. And I'll hop back here, and in FME AR, I won't show it live, but back when my desk was messier, I had a little kind of choppy piece of the Grand Canyon floating over my desk. And this would be in what we call model mode, where I can just have a more immersive experience with the 3D data using FME AR, which is a free app that we produce for iOS. Our Android version is woefully out of date, but top people are working on that. So if you're an Android person, happiness is on the way. So just carrying on some other formats on the XML side, we have really drastically improved that, and really we can now handle any XML that has an XSD, a schema document that goes with it. It can configure itself. So I'm told that even beer XML, and yes, that is a thing, can be read by FME. And so if you have your own XMLs, your own documents, you can get results quickly. I know that on a more serious side, there's something called CIM, which is for utilities, and we're able to use this technology to read and write CIM. Talk to us if that's something that you're up to. I think Trent knows something about that on Q&A. On the Ordnance Survey of the UK master map, we can read and write a variety of the new layers there, and that all was because of this XSD business. And then the S121, can't remember what that's for, but I think that might be for navigation. Anyway, we can read and write that. And lastly, TopoJSON's been there for a bit. It pops up from time to time. It's a very efficient way of using polygon coverages on the web. On the BIM side of things, AEC, Revit, lots and lots of improvements there. And I'm going to hand that over to Andrea in a minute to talk to. We also continue to improve IFC. And if you're someone that's a 12D user, there's more than 20,000 of those out there with that package that is for civil types of modeling and engineering. We definitely do a great job of reading that, and in the lab here, I know that writing is on its way. And so I think with that, maybe we'll hand it over to Andrea to take it away. So Stephanie, can you do the magic?
Sure thing. All right. Just gonna get the last little bit of those slides up. Hopefully you can all see my screen. All right, so yeah, as Dale mentioned, we have the native Revit reader. It's still in tech preview, but we are continually adding more support for it. So as our favorite thing is, we love lots of attributes. So we are pulling lots of family attributes, as well as project and view metadata. So if you need metadata about the file or the specific views that you're reading, we can definitely read that in. We've also done some work to simplify walls and making a thin line, because that apparently was not an easy task to do, to go from a wall thickness to the center line of a wall. I'll highlight that in my demo in just a second. We can also read project and georeference coordinate systems, as well as extracting floor plans. So I'll just jump right into it. And so this is just highlighting the workflow that we'll kind of be going through. I'm going to go ahead and just run this for right now. So just a quick overview. We are writing from Revit to a PDF document with just one of the levels of a floor plan. I'm going to go jump into Data Inspector just to show you what this model looks like. So this is actually just the 3D view, the 3D default view of this model that we're reading in. And you can see you can move around, you can turn things on and off if you don't want to see any doors or anything. So this is just some of the added support that our developers have added in. You also see table views here. You can get the file information too. You know, if you want the doc, the version, as well as if it's a central model. Some of the other views that we can see as well is just the native floor plans that are within Revit as well. And so this is just reading in one of those default floor plan views that is within the model. And just to kind of show you some of those parameters that would be available. If you're working with Revit and you haven't tried out the reader, I would really suggest doing that. So you can read the geometry in as surfaces, floor plans, or if you really don't want the geometry and you're just simply QAing the file, you can also read it in as non-spatial. You'll also see here that we can read different coordinate systems for the file. Now back into the demo for writing out to PDF. So you can see now all of the caches are updated. So we brought in some source data set over here. And from there, I actually read this in as the surface model, just the 3D view, as I got help from one of my colleagues, Dave Campanis, and it was a bit easier to work with the 3D views to build a simplified floor plan, which we'll see in the PDF at the end of it. So we've also merged on some data over here to get that metadata that's coming in from the file. And further along the line, we are extracting these floor plans. Now, what I wanted to highlight was, so we have, these are the walls. If you can see in the visualizer, in the visual preview, you can see these thicknesses are defining what the wall is coming from that 3D view. That's not the most ideal way to represent and see how it is in a floor plan. So what we actually need is just one single line to define where that is. And so with the center line replacer, our geometry team here at SAFE has done a lot of work behind the scenes. I don't know if Dale wants to mention anything or say anything.
Well, yes, it just was a very, very big, huge job to really try to make a pleasing center line. And I'm sure Andrew's going to reveal it for us in a second.
Yeah, so before I wanted to wait. So yeah, so we can see those thicknesses. And if we go to the center line replacer, we can see now we just have thin lines that outline where those rooms are and the building outline as well. So we really have simplified this and made it work. I will point out there is one thing I will be sending off to the team. There's a little bit of a funny one we'll be seeing in the PDF in a little bit, but and I think that's coming from the center line replacer. But see all these quirks you see as you're building the workflow. So carrying on, we have at the end, we've had to do some geometry cleanup as this model specifically did not have rooms going to, they weren't adjoining rooms. So we had to kind of build that topology so that it created a cleaner, visually appealing floor plan. And you can see this with the area builder. We have cleaner rooms. Now the other thing, I'm gonna jump over to here, is writing to PDF involved a few different transformers to stylize those lines. And we also, one of the other things, I'm gonna zoom in over here, is I set the rooms to be a specific color based on the room name, so that if it was a living room, they all looked the same. They were the same color. So you can see this teal color over here, the living room, as is this one over here. So we're getting some more sneak peek of what the final PDF will look like. yeah, so working with PDF was quite, it has a few things where you need to set it up so that you are properly writing it out. And yeah, so I'm just going to open up where the file is. And we can see this was written today at 8:41. And you can see this is what the floor plan looks like. So we took that from Revit and into a PDF, and now we have a floor plan. The other thing I added in was door location. So you can see these dotted dashed lines, and that is where the doors are for different rooms. And yeah, so yeah, that sums up the Revit demo, and I think I'll hand that back over to Dimitri.
Thanks very much, Andrea. While Dimitri's setting up to close the webinar out, I'll just mention that a lot of work went on there to pull off this, what you just saw with the Revit, and there's just so rich a data set in there that you're only limited by, again, your imagination. I think there's even ways that people are reading Revit and not caring at all about the geometry just because there's so much attribute information in there. And so anyway, we'll hand it off then to Dimitri to close us out.
I was going to talk about two topics, but I'm left with not that much time, so we'll see how it goes. I'll try to do quickly through both of them. So you know that last year, many of you know that last year I worked on computer vision with OpenCV, made a few experiments with detecting a few different things such as fire hydrants and stop signs, made a few examples, published them through our blog. This year we added a few more connectors, a few more computer vision systems such as Google, Amazon, Azure. So we have those transformers available in FME, and of course having them give you much better results than training an algorithm yourself. For example, if I was able to collect maybe 500 fire hydrants, Amazon probably had tens of thousands, if not millions, hydrants to train on, and whereas my detection shows pretty good positive results, it gives me a lot of false positives. I never saw any false positives with fire hydrants with, for example, Amazon recognition service. So those three, Google, Amazon, and Azure, work really well on frontal photography, the photos that you take with your camera, videos that you create. But in every single city I went last year on the world tour, people asked me whether computer vision can be used for geospatial data. And I will be talking about Pictera and PicterraConnector custom transformer that I build. That's the web platform built specifically for geospatial data. Here is a simple workflow with a recognition connector. So you don't send a photo for a particular thing that you look for, like with OpenCV, when I said, look for a 500 on this image. You just send an image and get back everything what recognition can see there. So, and here I just added some labels showing what it found, and it shows what it is and the confidence level. So how you would then, for example, find all the stop signs and how you would use FME there. I have the workspace and I will share it with you, but I won't run it. It's probably not much time here. So here it is. So we will read that JPEG that you just saw on my screen. Here I extract latitude and longitude from JPEG EXIF information, then resample my raster because I don't want to send the full resolution to Amazon. It's a paid service, so I would like to maximize the effect of submitting anything there. Then I detect the objects, so and that's what you see here. And just in general, as you can see on this picture, let me go just back here. It also gives you a few other things that the service thinks are there. Asphalt symbols, road signs, path, and so on. So then I clip. So I clip the image with the rectangle that Amazon showed me. For example, I can clip only fire hydrant, or I can clip only a stop sign, and then send it again to the service, to recognition service for reading this text. So here I have a different setting, so text detection, and I get back the name, what is written on that sign. For example, it can be speed, kilometers per hour, or miles per hour, or stop, like in this case. And then at the end, I simply place everything on the map, and now I know where my stop sign is. I will show it out just the result in a sec. So somewhere in Albany, so well, it's an approximate location of the sign. Here it is, and we know what this sign is. So if you go to our blog and read my article about computer vision and videos, you will see how you can filter, spatially filter your video feed, for example, which you would like to submit for detection. Because you don't want to submit the whole video, because so I'm reminding you, it's a paid service, although it's pretty cheap. So it's probably much cheaper than, well, how much time I spent on training my own detectors. So we will somehow tell you about how you can stay in control over your bills that are coming from those services, or any services, somehow later. That was a presentation for the World Tour. We're still thinking how we will deliver that. So, but now we can talk a little bit about Pictera. So, as I said, it's a cloud-based computer vision platform specifically designed for geospatial data. I have a few examples here, what they can detect. I should just find my browser. I actually am in the browser. So here. For example, this is Cameroon, and here we can see how the difference between already built buildings and the construction in progress can be easily detected and found. So that's one example of the constructions, ongoing construction, and here the buildings that are already complete. We can zoom to the same area and see how it all works. So detecting buildings, so here's the area, right? So you can see right away that roof detection works quite well. But with Pictera, you can detect a lot of different things. So for example, seals, I found that's an interesting example. We can turn on results, so you can count how many we have of those creatures somewhere. So detecting, monitoring, protecting them. So that's how you help, how these services can do that. Weed detection, and in this case, as you can see, they used infrared imagery, where the weed is particularly healthy. It's very bright, and you can see it much clearer than just normal crop. So again, can be very, very useful. So they also had project with crack detection on the pavement, but I decided to try it myself. And I have a series of workspaces here. I won't run them, and it'll just quickly show you. So you would have your image in any format, as usually with the FME. You don't care, or we don't care. Any interpretation, anything, we can just clip it. We can change the number of bands. We can rearrange them. We can change bitness, everything. And then we would clip to the area of interest, because we don't want to submit huge image to Pictera. Well, as usually, if it's a paid service, then you would like to maximize the effect of the processing time, right? So you would submit only the areas that you're interested in. So here I have a few areas of interest on my. So here I work with YVR, Vancouver International Airport, and I would like to find cracks on runways. I didn't find any on the runways, just some problems on the secondary parkings and taxiways. So I clip those areas and then upload them to Pictera. That's one workspace. And another workspace does the actual detection. I list all the rasters. I check what the detectors I have, and then I just simply submit with Pictera API. I ask to detect features and download results. Here is my raster ID I am going to work with and detector ID. So, and I will simply show you the results. Here I write them to a geodatabase, but I will just inspect them from here. So these are cracks, and I would like to change my background map. It will load in a sec, I hope, please. No. Well, anyhow, I will show you the results somewhere else. I made a video, so if you're interested in this workflow, I made a 7-minute video which you can watch and see the project in details, how I detect the road cracks. But I also have one more workspace which has, well, probably nothing new from FME 2020, but you may find it interesting because it shows how you can generate reports. Here I bring in my image, no, not this one. This one, my database of all the cracks, bring in my images, all the pavement, so that I calculate the areas of the cracks only on pavement. So if I see something on grass or on the roofs, so I don't take that into account. So computer vision services are pretty, well, stupid. People that develop them are very smart, but computer vision, it's just pure statistics, brute force, nothing else. So FME brings some common sense to the detection results. For example, if you find a crack on the grass, it's not something you're interested in. So just use FME, all your GIS layers as spatial filter, something that gives more sense to your data set. And then at the end, I generate some nice maps and make 3 reports at PDF and Excel. And I also place work order for fixing cracks through CityWorks. I will show you the output in Excel. Here it is. And if you are interested, so you can see here, I transpose my table. So my column names are here, like vertically, not horizontally, and here are the results. So I output everything in a separate sheet and added some color coded coloring for the cells. Again, that will be all in the workspace, and you can check how it all works. And this, the last one, the one that I wanted to show you. Maybe can zoom in a little bit, or maybe not. Because we are running out of time. I also have my PDF, and I also have my CityWorks orders. So here they are. I can click on them so that the brigade can go and fix the problem on that particular area. So it's 9 o'clock. In theory, we should be closing by now. So if you have to run, we will have the recording available. But those who can stay after 9 o'clock, well, our Pacific time, I will show a little bit what we are doing about AR. Yeah, all those slides will be available for you, so you can see what other results I got with Pixera. You can see some building detection and some tree species detection, and I think that's very interesting and quite important. So I think that was quite successful here. So, but now I'm switching to
Dimitri, why don't I just talk a little bit about the ending slides, and then we'll do the AR to finish up. So just scroll down a wee bit, and we'll let the AR bonus content. So just to kind of wrap up, we hope that you have enjoyed learning about FME 2020. There's still a little bit more to go with the AR side, which if you can stay, please do. There is another webinar coming up on Thursday, and I'm sure Stephanie will tweet out, or not tweet out, but well, probably tweet out too, but chat out the link to that. And we are planning, some people are asking about what's going on with the world tour. As you can imagine, that all had to be unwound, all 70 cities basically, and various ways of being changed. The ones in North America that we control are all canceled, and we're working with our partners around the world to figure out in the local communities what the new universe looks like. But in North America, anyway, we're going to be doing some form of virtual FME World Tour. We don't know the exact shape of that yet, but we will be making announcements probably in the next 10 days as to that. So I think with that, we'll let Dimitri carry on with the FME AR, and then we're going to hang around and do some recap of the questions and answers. So thanks for those that have to leave. Thanks for tuning in. Otherwise, Dimitri, take your time and take us on an AR journey.
Okay, so I'm back here. We started our AR journey 2 years ago, right? When we just made nice visualization of the models, maybe which you could place on your desk, but somehow it didn't feel right. So we didn't switch to this way of visualization, visualizing of our data. So the word augmented reality just means that we somehow augment our world. So this year we made all those changes I was asking for to implement scale 1-to-1, so that the model that we build fits into the world, and orientation, so that we don't have to place the model correctly with our fingers, rotate it once it's open. So those changes are made, and here we give you a few ideas what people can do with AR. So, and some people started doing this work. We have a few customers that explore this very actively, and we really would like to hear more from you. So some of those ideas include seeing infrastructure, for example, all the pipes underground, location of the wildfires, for example, if it's a brigade somewhere in the field, and the danger of fires is well known. So it's really nice to have some real-time information where it is, from where it's coming, and how far it is. This landmark example, which I will try to show in a few minutes. Where is my team, for example? You go and you can look around and see where your team is, the buildings that will come or that are gone, and so on. Or maybe seeing 3D landscapes, mines, and so on. Here are a few ideas that I tried. So placing the pipes under the ground, seeing the landmarks around. Then here is the Amachi internment camp in Colorado, which I placed on a sport field of the newest school, and was able to just walk around. I have a blog about that Amachi camp, so you can check it. And for my personal use, I try to set up some furniture on my patio to see how it will look like, and eventually you can see and compare that. It worked quite well for me. So, and maybe now I can demo the AR, how it can work all together. And for that, I need to go outside.
Yes. Excellent.
Done. And I will run the workspace that will show the landmarks well, around here, around lower mainland. So the workspace is submitted, it goes to the server, it returns me the landmarks. You can see how quickly it does it. Now I find my location.
Oh, you need to get your safe socks on.
Yes.
And it's arm and found Seymour that way.
Wow, Dimitri's got quite a nice backyard.
Yeah, very nice.
It's like pulling back the curtain. Yeah, there's real people.
What were some of the interesting questions or themes that came up?
I will go with themes because I try to keep my question board clear. Otherwise, it gets quite dense. But there's a lot of great questions about Revit, which I thought was interesting because I guess people are quite excited about this, which is excellent. Some questions about collapsed bookmarks and whether or not that was introduced in 2020, like the ability to cache in bookmarks in 2020, which Actually, I think it was available in 2019 for sure, possibly even later 2018 build. I don't know, Trent, what did you see going by?
Trying to
A
look
lot of
here.
Revit.
Oh, here we go. What have we got here? Oh, my favorite was the inclusion of a Gouldian finch. I actually don't know what that is. I guess that's a type of bird that maybe Dimitri was able to show when he was outside.
Or I don't know if it's the one sitting on the hammock post.
That's
So-
what I'm thinking it is.
Someone is very smart to be able to call out that bird like that.
Yes, impressive.
Oh,
Do you need a license of Revit on your computer to be able to read Revit with FME Desktop?
No, you do not.
Okay.
There was some talk about spaces being read. Andrea, I believe we do read spaces out of Revit files, but I can't remember if they have geometry or not, or what's the deal with spaces. Do you recall?
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. I'd have to go and investigate a little bit more.
But I do know that these were talked about a lot, and we don't have anybody from the Revit team online with us today, but I'm confident they are being read. Exactly how and if they're in the floor plans or not, I don't know. I remember there was some decision to have them being read in the floor plans, and then they weren't, and then they were. So I don't actually know how that all ended up. But anyway, definitely we do read spaces. Whether or not we read them in all situations, I just don't know.
Here's an interesting question that's near and dear to my heart. With the workflow tracing, can you click on a specific attribute to see where it came from? Not currently, but that actually is something that has come up, and we might look into investigating, because now that we've kind of opened the gates with tracing, there are a number of things we can do with that. So yes, that's a great idea. I will tie it into, there's I think another request on the ideas page that I can possibly reply to you with, so that you can upvote it and add your comments.
And that actually, Annabelle and I have been doing lots of work with respect to the Reddit metadata question, and this relates to that too. So eventually our dream would be that you could click on an attribute or an output feature type and see exactly where each piece came from.
Very powerful thing.
There was a question about FME for the enterprise. What about Azure Cloud?
So I think FME is on the Azure Marketplace, and we've done a bunch of work there. I know that the folks on Thursday will be talking more about it, but the answer is that I'm pretty sure that we're on the Azure Marketplace, or maybe that's coming soon. Maybe it's the Google one we're on now. But basically, we're working very hard to get there quickly. You can today spin up, and we call it bring your own license, spin up an Azure machine and then install FME and have it work there. People are doing that. We're just looking at making that easier and nicer. And we are supporting a lot of these different Azure cloud services as well.
Actually, I just enabled an option for attendees to raise hands too. So just curious, by a show of hands, how many people have actually downloaded FME 2020 and have tried it out? Got hands going up. Oh, they're flying up. Hang on.
Woohoo.
Still going. Okay. So far, yeah, we're gonna maybe be just around the 20% mark, which is really awesome because that was announced not long ago at all. I'll chat out the link too for anyone looking where they can download FME 2020 if you haven't yet. We also have a lot of blogs and resources on it, so you want to check those out too.
Bilal is asking about upgrading a workspace that has more than 200 transformers. Can we make this easier? Because right now that'd be a whole. And so yes, we are looking at ways to do bulk upgrading because we know, especially with the rollout of feature tables, you're going to want to do that. And we'll go back to the versioning side of things. Yes, we are looking at doing integration of Git into Workbench and having that work well with FME Server, and at the same time also having some form of a diff tool. So all those pieces are being looked at, and they're bubbling up to being the #1 thing on the board. Is that fair to say? They're not quite there yet, but they're contenders.
Yeah, it's more of a, we just want to make sure that we're ensuring a good experience from authoring all the way through to automating. So, making sure that whatever we do on Workbench or whatever version control system we do try to support, that we are supporting what you're actually looking for, but also integrating nicely with FME Server, because there's so much firepower on the server side that we can leverage. So just making sure that, it's a really good end-to-end experience.
Yeah. Larry asked if those signs of Dimitri's were 3D objects. Yes, what Dimitri did was just create 3D objects and place them in the real world. And then when he was spinning around, they were really there. And that's really the same technology as Dimitri has used before to simulate like that old camp and some of those kinds of things. Readers and writers, you have to upgrade those by right-clicking. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Yeah, so that was created on the fly. So all those data does not exist at the moment when you submit the request. The pipes or those signs, they're generated when you press run button. So
yes,
you don't have to convert everything, all your data, to augmented reality.
And so that's what Dimitri was saying, using that same technology, but having it for kind of a real world situational thing. So we were working, I know Dimitri, the Australian fire folks, some of them were using this type of thing to try to understand what was happening in their area. And I think being built into the FME AR writer is a concept of when is this data stale? So in other words, if you have an AR file that was generated 10 minutes ago, maybe it's no longer good, and so it'll refuse to show it, or at least warn you that it's stale. So these are some of the kind of things that that we're up to. ETA for the Git diff, I think the earliest, it will not be in the 2020 stream, I don't believe. So it'll be 2021 would be my guess. Would you say that, Annabelle?
I never like I never like promising anything, but like it's definitely more on the 2021 side than the 2020 side.
We can say that it's not in the 2020 side.
No.
At least our current line of thinking. Yeah. Somebody commented about Dimitri's socks. So we actually are looking at, this is probably a company secret, but there is plans to order a new line of FME safe software. I've seen.
Safe
so that's something to look forward to.
Oh.
Heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, should we call that good, Stephanie? What do you think?
I think that's pretty good. Yep, if anyone still has questions that we didn't get to, especially if you have questions for Dimitri, I know he's really active on Twitter, so you can tweet him at Dimitri@safe. We also have live chat at safe.com where you can get us through at many hours of the day. And then the FME community is probably the first place you want to go to post your questions there. So hopefully we got all the questions. If we didn't, that's where you can find us. And thanks again to everyone, all 268 of you who are still with us now. That's pretty amazing. And
yes,
yeah, it was a fun webinar. All right, I'm gonna shut it down. I might give you guys or ask you guys to turn off your own webcams on the button on the side.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Guys.
Thanks for tuning in.